Hi, this is Brandy Davis. I am the HMIS trainer with Echo. This video is going to cover outreach and navigation and how that operates in our community. The Echo Outreach and Navigation team works to facilitate connection between partners, connecting our partners to the system, and creating and revising systems and pathways for street outreach to reach and house more people. So this could look like connecting the Other Ones Foundation to community health paramedics, or maybe connecting community health paramedics to Link Austin, just making sure everyone can work together as seamlessly as possible. This graph illustrates that navigation plays a huge role in our community's homeless response system. We want to focus on housing problem solving, helping them get IDs, understanding history of homelessness, connecting them to wraparound services are all also really important services beyond just the coordinated assessment. And outreach can happen anywhere along the pathway to housing. There are two types of housing navigation: housing problem solving, where there is not a programmatic housing intervention available, and then permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing specific navigation, like a PSH packet, or maybe an outreach provider is helping with a rapid rehousing intake. These are really different housing navigations because a PSH and rapid rehousing navigation are very specific and very defined. The PSH packet is done the same way every time. And housing problem solving, on the other hand, is different every single time because it's dependent on the client and what their history is and what resources they have available to them, since there's not that programmatic housing intervention available to them. There's not support available. So problem solving is dependent on their situation. But both of the housing navigation systems have in common that they're supporting a client between when they're experiencing homelessness and when they're in permanent housing. PSH and rapid rehousing navigation exists to make intakes more efficient. We noticed about 6 years prior to the creation of a navigation system that there was a need there. We had plenty of housing capacity at that time and plenty of people who were experiencing homelessness but weren't filling those placements efficiently. And that's where navigation came from. If PSH staff had to start from scratch and get ID documents together, history of homelessness, all of that, that enrollment would take a very long time. And it was clear that something needed to happen on the front end while people are waiting on the list, the housing list, to engage clients, make sure that the client's eligible for PSH, make sure that they're actually chronically homeless for a PSH program, get ID documentations ready for them. And this helps avoid programmatic delay and makes the system more efficient. And that's where navigation came from. And when we say navigators, these are community case managers or outreach workers who are intentionally working with clients on housing problem solving or on rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing specific navigation. So specifically targeting clients in order to do some type of navigation. Now we're going to touch on housing problem solving. So what happens when a client doesn't have programmatic housing support available? These are a few of the types of navigation that can be touched on. So one is healthcare navigation. So do they have MAP? Do they have primary care physician? Shelter, housing diversion. This can be, does anyone have someone they can reunify with? Does the client have friends, family that they can stay with long term? Are they interested in emergency shelter? Do they qualify for any institutions that might be helpful for them? And then income planning, do they have SSI, SSDI? Do they need to apply for SSI, SSDI, those benefits? Are they employed? Have they been employed before? What kinds of barriers exist for employment? So just kind of talking with them about a plan for their income if they are interested. And ID navigation, what documents do they have available to them? Are there any documents that they need support in gathering that maybe you can assist with? So this could be applications for Social Security cards. Sometimes financial resources aren't available to a client for getting certain documentation, and that's been a barrier for them. But our community does have financial assistance for getting IDs if the client needs that. Now we're going to touch on what PSH or rapid rehousing specific navigation looks like a little bit, just so that you know what that means. And this is focusing on pieces of PSH navigation. It's a little bit more involved. And a main piece of PSH navigation is completing a PSH packet with the client. And navigation staff will only complete a PSH packet with the client if asked to do so, because this is entirely dependent on PSH prioritization lists. Just completing the packet, a navigation staff just finishing this with a client does not mean that they can be referred. The client has to first be at the top of the list and hear from an ECHO outreach team that they'll be at the top of the list and we'll need that packet soon. Just so that you know, the required documents for that are ID, social security card, disability verification, or SSI award letter, chronic homelessness verification form, chronic homelessness timeline, verification of homelessness episodes, and pieces of what that looks like for verifying the homelessness episodes are shelter records, third-party homelessness verification. And this is something that specifically outreach and navigation staff complete with clients. This slide is going to be talking about the different kinds of outreach approaches in our outreach system. We have general street outreach and targeted street outreach, and most outreach is a combination of the two types. General street outreach usually has a regional focus. Outreach will visit certain campsites every week or bi-weekly and generally hold a caseload of clients they go back and visit and work with. On the other hand, targeted street outreach is guided by coordinated entry prioritization. So Link Austin does targeted street outreach, targeting clients at the top of the PSH list so that they are ready for when they're pulled for permanent supportive housing, preparing those PSH packets and whatnot. The goal is not so much about where they are regionally in the city, focusing north or south. This kind of outreach, it's more about finding a particular client because they are on a particular housing list and getting those specific tasks done with them. In our system, we have two different kinds of outreach requests. Submitting a request requesting 30 days of outreach support for clients who are out of contact, missing, disengaged from services, or declining services. These can go one of two ways, either BOLO, which is to be on the lookout for clients out of contact or unable to be found, or engagement for clients refusing or repeatedly disengaging from services. Now we'll cover the difference between a BOLO request and a navigation request. There is an outreach form to complete to request BOLO or engagement. BOLO requests work to reach clients and reconnect them to services. Engagement requests are attempting to engage clients for housing services or assist them in making last chance appointments. So sometimes agencies are able to get clients in an appointment. So sometimes this piece is problem solving with the client over the 30 days to see how we can help them make sure they make that appointment. And so that's something that outreach staff sometimes do with clients. Names of both BOLO and engagement clients are sent out weekly in a list to community providers. The purpose of that is to get those clients' names in front of outreach providers so that if someone is out doing, say, street med, maybe they see a client, let's say Joe, and knows he's on BOLO, then we would want that staff to find Joe again and get him reconnected with the housing program before those 30 days are up. Clients are active on both BOLO and engagement for 30 days. The first 30 days are the most important no matter what. Clients do stay active on BOLO for 90 days total, but those first 30 days are the most important for our community. If BOLO clients have no contact for a total of 90 days, they do get inactivated. The reason we do that is because we do not want someone who has moved out of the city or is no longer homeless to be on our active housing list. We don't want to research for them every time we pull referrals. We try to keep the housing list as clean as possible with as many active clients as possible. We search for them for those 90 days. If that doesn't work, they do get inactivated and pulled off of the housing list. If someone does reach back out after the 90 days, someone who's on BOLO, it's past 90 days, but they reach out to the system, generally we'll want to guide them back to coordinated entry. Or if someone is working with a client, they've been out for, say, 100 days, but then they reconnect and the staff there sees that the person's assessment is not that old, but the staff is seeing they're inactive. They want to notify us that they're back in contact. There are some instances where they don't need reassessment, so we can go into HMIS and take them off inactive and reactivate their housing referrals. That is just an understanding of if their coordinated entry is old, do they need a new one, or just it's an issue of their back and they're still waiting on housing services. On engagement, that request is 30 days, that's it. Engagement clients take quite a bit more staff capacity because these clients, it's not just that we're looking for them, we know where they are, we have contact with them, but they're not engaging for some reason in services. Maybe it's a misunderstanding about the program, so have conversations around that. Maybe it's not the right time for them, not going to work with their schedule. So, but these requests require more staff investment over 30 days, so they aren't extended. One, there's not enough staff capacity, and two, we want to honor the client's decision. If the client repeatedly declines, the client repeatedly says they don't want to be part of a housing program, after that 30 days, we want to honor their decision. So we'll say okay and inactivate them per their request. So that concludes the overview of how outreach and navigation functions in our community and the different pieces of it. You can always reach out to us if you have any questions about outreach and navigation. Thank you.